Okay. All right. So, um, can somebody at least recap what we went over last week then, since there's nothing to say? Can somebody at least recap or summarize those three chapters before we go into First Samuel 25?
I think I based on what I've written down. So I know David left and he went to Adullam. Saul, he was running from Saul. Then Saul, let's see, wait, no. Yeah, okay, yeah, he did. He left, he went to Adullam, and then Saul had, I guess, came after him, and he had the 85 priests of Nob killed. Um, and then David ran off again to the city of Keilah. Saul came after him again. Then David spared Saul's life like twice. David was respecting the anointing on Saul. And then the last thing I remember, Jonathan pretty much helped David find his strength, like, and told him that he'll end up being like king and he'll be by his side. And then that was it.
Okay, very good. And what about Saul? What does Saul see about David? I think probably around, what was it, about chapter 24? What happened between David and Saul? Because we kind of talked about that a little bit, because we saw where David actually spared Saul's life, and then we saw that Saul had like a little, kind of like a little breakdown, and just realizing the kindness of David, which kind of made him, look at himself, and now realizing, see, he was fearful prior to this that David was going to be king, but like David wanted to be king and was going to take something away from him, something that was his. But seeing the characteristics of David and the behaviors of David, and Saul having to reflect on himself and what it is that he wanted to do um against David, then he actually saw that David was worthy of being king. And there was a difference. He had to look at the heart of him. By his actions, he couldn't deny it. He realized that, David was allowing him to get away, with that power, but he knew that God will reward him for his kindness. So we see that, there's definitely a shift, at least for this moment that was happening. But Saul didn't want David, because he recognized David's power, and so he was like, just please don't kill, my family. And so David and Saul pretty much parted ways at that point. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe we just kind of talked about, like, you can have a physical power, you can definitely have a physical strength, but there's something about, being like strong in the word, or strong in the Lord, that will really shine through. Those are the things that will really, get you where it is that God will want you to be. Those are the things that people will recognize, and we had an opportunity to see that with David. So I thought that it was pretty good. All right. And so in First Samuel 25, we're actually going to be talking about the death of Samuel. Okay. And it says, can everybody see the screen? Does everybody ever see the screen? Valencia, I see you. So can you shake? Okay, you see it? All right, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So it says, now Samuel died, and all Israel gathered for his funeral. They buried him at his house in Ramah. Then David moved down to the wilderness of Maon. There was a wealthy man from Maon who owned property near the town of Carmel. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and it was sheep shearing time. The man's name was Nabal, and his wife Abigail was a sensible and beautiful woman. But Nabal, a descendant of Caleb, was cruel and mean in all his dealings. When David heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep, he sent 10 of his young men to Carmel with a message for Nabal. Peace and prosperity to you, your family, and everything you own. I am told it is sheep shearing time. While your shepherds stayed among us near Carmel, we never harmed them, and nothing was ever stolen from them. Ask your own men, and they will tell you that this is true. So would you be kind to us since we have come at a time of celebration? Please share any provisions you might have on hand with us and with your friend David. David's young men gave this message to Nabal in David's name, and they waited for a reply. Who is this fellow David? Nabal sneered to the young men. Who does this son of Jesse think he is? There's a lot of servants these days who run away from their masters. Should I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've slaughtered for my shearers and give it to a band of outlaws who come from who knows where? So David's young men returned. So David's young men returned and told him what Nabal had said. Get your swords, was David's reply, and he strapped on his own. Then 400 men started off with David, and 200 remained behind to guard the equipment. Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants went to Abigail and told her, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, but he screamed insults at them. These men have been very good to us, and we never suffered any harm from them. Nothing was stolen from us the whole time they were with us. In fact, day and night, they were like a wall of protection to us and the sheep. You need to know this and figure out what to do, for this is going to be trouble for our master and his whole family. He's so ill-tempered that no one will even talk to him. Abigail wasted no time. She quickly gathered 200 loaves of bread, 2 wineskins full of wine, 5 sheep that had been slaughtered, nearly a bushel of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 fig cakes. She packed them on donkeys and said to her servants, go ahead, I will follow you shortly. But she didn't tell her husband Nabal what she was doing. As she was riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, she saw David and his men coming toward her. David had just been saying, a lot of good it did to help this fellow. We protected his flocks in the wilderness, and nothing he owned was lost or stolen. But he has repaid me evil for good. May God strike me and kill me, even if one of his household is still alive tomorrow morning. When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed low before him. She fell at his feet and said, I accept all blame in this matter, my lord. Please listen to what I have to say. I know Nabal is a wicked and ill-tempered man. Please don't pay any attention to him. He is a fool, just as his name suggests. But I never even saw the young man you sent. Now, my lord, as surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, since the Lord has kept you from murdering and taking vengeance into your own hands, let all your enemies and those who try to harm you be as cursed as Nabal is. And here is a present I, your servant, have brought to you and our young men. Please forgive me if I have offended you in any way. The Lord will surely reward you with the lasting dynasty, for you are fighting the Lord's battles, and you have not done anything wrong throughout your entire life. Even when you are chased by those who seek to kill you, your life is safe in the care of the Lord your God, secure in his treasure pouch. But the lives of your enemies will disappear like stone shots from a sling. When the Lord has done all he promised and has made you the leader of Israel, don't let this be a blemish on your record. Then your conscience won't have to bear the staggering burden of needless bloodshed and vengeance. And the Lord has done these great things for you. Please remember me, your servant. David replied to Abigail, praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you to meet me today. Thank God for your good sense. Bless you for keeping me from murder and from carrying out vengeance with my own hands. For I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, who has kept me from hurting you, that if you had not hurried out to meet me, not one of Nabal's men would still be alive tomorrow morning. Then David accepted her present and told her, "Return home in peace. I have heard what you said. We will not kill your husband." When Abigail arrived home, she found that Nabal was throwing a big party and celebrating like a king. When he was very drunk, she didn't tell him anything about her meeting with David until dawn the next day. In the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him what had happened. As a result, he had a stroke and he lay paralyzed on his bed like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck him and he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Praise the Lord who have avenged the insult I received from Nabal, has kept me from doing it myself. Nabal has received the punishment for his sin." Then David sent messengers to Abigail to ask her to become his wife. When the messengers arrived at Carmel, they told Abigail, "David has sent us back to take you to marry him." She bowed low to the ground and responded, "I, your servant, would be happy to marry David. I would even be willing to become a slave, washing the feet of his servants." Quickly getting ready, she took along 5 of her servant girls as attendants, mounted her donkey, and went with David's messengers. And so she became his wife. David also married Ahinoam from Jezreel, making both of them his wives. Saul, meanwhile, had given his daughter Michal, David's wife, to a man named Gallim from Palti, son of Laish. So with that reading, what are some of the things that stand out to you guys about that? Did anybody get anything from the reading?
Yes,
Yeah.
he didn't have to be, David didn't have to go and hurt him the way he was gonna hurt him. The Lord punished him in a different way, so David didn't have to do it the violent way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else?
Abigail, she was very forward as a wife. She made a lot of decisions, and all of those things were signs of income. And so to be able to make that kind of decision where that was a lot of money that she was going to take without, asking the family or anything. So it was like she already had the authority, which was a little bit more than I would think typically women had then. Um, and then the second thing was that all of the things that she mentioned to David, a lot of it was things that she shouldn't have known in advance, about him becoming the king and him being honored and him being blessed and how the Lord has kept them and things like that. She knew that that he had a great reputation, but um, I think some of it was information that she wouldn't quite have had yet.
Okay. So where do you think some of that information could have came from?
Well, I think it was from the Holy Spirit. Of course, we don't know him as that at this time, but
Okay. Okay, something to think about. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, so the two things that we have is about Abigail being forward as his wife, in authority, and about David not punishing Nabal. So, let's just talk about Abigail for just a little while, because is this the first time anybody's ever really reading about Abigail, or have anybody ever done a study on Abigail before? This is
This is my
No,
first time.
this is the first
first
time.
time for me. Yeah.
Okay, so we in the marriage ministry, which I'm gonna plug it real quick, which our marriage ministry is really great. In our marriage ministry, we actually did a brief, because there's not a lot of information about Abigail. And so what we did a little study about her and Bathsheba and how David pretty much earned both of them as a wife, and just exploring what the differences were. And so one of the things that we briefly talked about, I know this is not the marriage ministry, but I love that I love the way Abigail kind of portrayed herself, like she not only did what she needed to do to, I guess, I don't want to say spare her husband's life, but definitely spare him some time, right? But to spare David's life and, speak life into David, is what I kind of gathered when Valencia was, telling us about how she knew the stuff with David that she should not have, or, otherwise known. And sometimes thinking about that being our role as a woman, it's unfortunate because I like to think, I don't know about anybody else, I would love to be in a situation where I feel completely comfortable and vulnerable enough to just let a man lead. I'm okay with that. You want to take care of things and I could trust you to take care of everything, then I could play the background, but a lot of times in a lot of situations, and it doesn't have to just be in a relationship, it could be at work, it could be wherever it is. A lot of times women are in a position where they have to step up and they have to be, I'm just actually going to stop this for a while because I feel like this is about to go someplace. So they have to kind of step up and, be these authoritative figures. And, it could be very controversial, it really could be. I mean, especially when it comes to ministry. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't believe that women should be, have certain titles in ministry, because they feel that women shouldn't be able to lead a man. Well, I don't feel like women should lead men either, if you really want to know my honest opinion, but there needs to be some men around that can lead. And if there's none that's around that can lead, then, oftentimes women stand up. We see that Nabal as an individual, he didn't lead wisely. He didn't even have the respect of the individuals around him. And so Abigail was in a position to where she, as his wife, had to protect him, make a sound decision, because she knew what it would cost them. What it would really cost them if they followed Nabal's lead. And so not only by her being a woman of a certain character did she, and I'm gonna say spare her husband some time, right? But definitely what she did for the future king, not knowing how she was going to be speaking into his life. And so sometimes as women, we do have to step up. And that's the part that people don't want to talk about. We have to step up in the marriage ministry. As we were going through different couples in the Bible, of course, we started with Adam and Eve, and why Eve did what she had to do. And we had to explore Adam for a little while and realize he didn't speak up. Eve was not privy to what God said. Me personally, she probably shouldn't have said anything. She could have spared us a lot of pain. But Adam didn't say anything either. He played the background, and so she did what it was that she knew how to do. I'm not going to say who was wrong. I'm not going to say who's right. But I will say that Adam was very present and Adam didn't do anything. And so sometimes, right, wrong, or indifferent, we do have to step up, and people tend to have a problem with the way that we respond to certain things. But when we're dealing with a situation like Abigail, because she saw if she did not speak up, it was going to be hell to pay, not only for Nabal, but for so many individuals. Being that wise woman, being that woman who sees, being that godly woman, being that woman who is not afraid to step up. I mean, I love that character, those characteristics of Abigail. Yes, Valencia?
One thing that I like, she handled the situation really well. Like, she had the opportunity to be a public embarrassment to her husband, but she didn't do that. She waited until they were in private and spoke to him. And a lot of us are going to go off in the moment, but she waited until he was sober, and not when it wouldn't have done any good whatsoever during the night before, to speak to him. But even in her speaking to him, she, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, but she still was not disrespectful to her husband. Towards David, he could see the truth and she had to admit the truth, that my husband is not wise, but she didn't just bury her husband and he's this and he's that. And she handled it with grace, and also ended up making her husband look good, even though in that moment he didn't necessarily deserve it, or at least we felt like he didn't necessarily deserve it at the time. But she still, as his wife, gave him honor, even though in that moment our feelings would say he isn't deserving of honor, but he's still husband.
He was still her
Still husband.
husband. He was still her husband. Absolutely. And for that reason, looking at her as a wife, because if she would have thrown her husband under the bus before David, or just turned against him, while David might have been appreciative of it, for the sake of his life, that might not have made her that desirable of a wife. But because of the characteristics that she displayed of a wife, when she lost her husband, David went ahead and married her. And this, not to compare, and I guess I'm gonna touch on it very briefly, but we're gonna go into it a little bit more later on. But this was very different than what he saw of Bathsheba and how he took her on as opposed to, Abigail, and we see the difference. And I like this, and I like the comparison just a little bit. Sometimes it doesn't speak to how the relationship wound up working out, but it just speaks to, us as women. A lot of times, some of the things that we think is gonna make ourselves more appealing to a man, is really not necessarily appealing to them. The other night I was watching, I think they must be having a new show on like TV1 or BET or something like that. And they had Lisa Ray on it was it wasn't really a commercial, but it was just an advertisement for the show. And so she was going down all of the stuff that she wanted in a man. And I think Lisa Ray is an outwardly beautiful individual. She might be an inwardly beautiful individual. I don't know. But I know she knows that she's outwardly very attractive, and a lot of the stuff that she was saying, like, well, what are some of the characteristics that you like a man? And so she wanted somebody with money, she wanted somebody who would treat her a certain way. And a lot of it was very surface. And then I remember her saying something like, sometimes she would look at other women and be like, well, why she got a man and I don't have a man? Well, why she have a husband and I don't have a husband? And I just wondered, well, what is it about the woman where she think that woman don't deserve a husband? What is it? Do you feel that she's not as outwardly attractive as you, so you're more deserving of a husband than somebody else? I mean, I don't really understand what that means. I really don't understand what that means. And a lot of women feel that way. Well, why does she have a man and I don't have a man? Because what you think is going to get a man and keep a man is not going to do it. You might get a man who wants to screw you because they are attracted to what you have, but that doesn't mean that he wants to marry you. That's something different. That doesn't mean that you've shown him that there's something about you as an individual that he wants to choose you to raise his children, to add to his family. Don't ever think for a second that men don't think about stuff like that. One thing about men, I could tell you, I'm a big girl. I ain't got no edges. I got dry scalp. I got a whole lot of stuff, but I'm going to always have somebody who wants to marry me. And you know why? Because I'm a wife. Because I'm a wife. I am a wife at heart. I am a wife. And so somebody who would think that because of their outer appearance, that is what makes you a wife, then you have it wrong. Because people are looking when we're not trying. We don't try. This is something that we build up. It's a character thing. It is. And you don't know, do we ever stop to see what a man wants? We might ask what they like, but what do you want? And sometimes they might not know. Sometimes they really might not know. But I could tell you, I want somebody who wants quality over quantity any day. Then, Musi, Cynthia?
Yeah, Nicole, you're right about that. Like my baby son, my kids notice I clean a lot. I'm very thorough with cleaning and stuff like that. And I asked my son one day, I said, if you find a woman that's very beautiful, but she doesn't clean like me, like, would you marry him? He was like, no, mommy. So I understand exactly what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, but this is what he's seen of his mom, and he might, I mean, not to say but to date, to do some other things, maybe, and that's not to say that, really outwardly beautiful women are not proposed to and married all the time, but at some point you're going to have to show that you have far more to offer than that, because that's not it. It's not going to sustain you. It's just not. It's not. It's not. And so I love this about Abigail. I love because without trying, she showed what type of wife she was. Without trying, it's how she dealt with her current husband, how she handles situations. These are the things that and then just even Valencia said we didn't call him the Holy Spirit at the time, but the things that she knew, she had to see him through God's eyes. She could have just seen him as a killer. She could have seen him as a threat. She could have seen him the way her husband saw him. But she was somebody, I mean, think about it. Even the workers felt comfortable enough to talk to her. So once again, that speaks to her character. It speaks to her character. And we need to think about that. There's some individuals, if a person can't talk to you, if a person can't approach you, a lot of times, we're of a certain age. I mean, for the most part, we're of a certain age. We've lived enough life, We have to think that, especially in this day and age, people come along with stuff. They come along with kids. They come along with friends. They come along with, they come along with a lot. How do everybody else get around, get along with you? What are people saying about you? What are your conversations like? What are you wearing? What are you into? You'd be surprised at the things that people are watching about you. She had no idea that this was going to make David, that this was going to make David want to marry her. She was just trying to help him and help her husband at the same time. And so it spoke volumes. I really love this about Abigail. Any thoughts or concerns? I don't want to get into it too much because we're going to revisit it a little later on, but any current thoughts?
Yeah, just real quick. I don't know if any of you are familiar on social media. The guy, he's passed now, but his name is Kevin Samuels. And he started this whole high value man, high value woman type of ordeal that kind of is still going on. And I love this conversation because right away I was like, he saw her value, and it kind of makes me like, especially being someone who has, had to grow and be where I am now to, being engaged and everything. I had to really see that, like, it kind of bothers me when I hear people talk about value. And like you said, it's very surface level. Oh, you have degrees. Oh, you have this, you have that. And you'll have men who say that, like, that's not what we really value most of the time, because at the end of the day, that stuff is great for you. But when it comes to the family, I don't want you having, 3, 4, 5 jobs and you working. Like, I need this type of home. And you'll have women that get offended by it. And they, it's immediately like, well, you can't handle me. You can't handle a strong woman with 5 degrees and a job that's 10 hours a day. And it's like so I've heard conversations where men are saying to women, this is what I as a man, and a lot of them different men say the same thing kind of the same way. We don't really value your material things. We don't really value that type of stuff, because as men, real men, we want to bring that to the table. Like you said, what kind of mother are you? What kind of nurturer are you? Can you take care of the home that I have to bring the bacon to? But I just had to throw that in there real quick, because it is that whole high value male and woman, and the whole idea today, it is very surface level, looks, money, degrees, all of these things that can vanish and be taken away tomorrow. So that's just my little 2 cents.
Oh no, I appreciate it 100%. I actually, and this is the second time that he came up this week actually, but I really like Kevin Samuels. A lot of women would disagree with me.
I did too.
I did. I really liked him. I would say that his delivery was off putting, but outside of his delivery, his message was thorough. And one of the things that he used to say, and he would have like a format where a woman would come on. Now, this was another thing, because I will say this: if it was up to Kevin Samuels, I would not have a husband, okay? Because he would tell me that I was too fat, I was too old, and I had too many kids. If it was up to him, let's be honest, I would not have a husband, right? But what he would really be saying, a lot of women would come on there, and he would ask them, what size, dress do they wear, what, how old are they, how many children they have, and fathers or whatever. And so they would ask these questions, but they would all say that they want a high value man. And when they say that they wanted a high value man, value meaning money, 6 figures or more. Okay. And yes, what Amber's saying, I'm thinking about one lady in particular who was a nurse, and she worked out, because I think she was working out while she was doing it. And, she was a nurse, if I'm not mistaken. And, and she's like, I don't understand. Like, why don't I have a man and all this other stuff? And she has these degrees and she works a lot and this, that, and the third. And he said, so like, do you want a family? Do you want children? And she said, yes. So then he said, well, you want a husband who makes 6 figures. That means that this husband is going to be out there and he's going to, have to work to make this money. And he said, how much do you want to contribute to the household? She said, I don't know, maybe about 25%. And so he says, you want to contribute 25% to your household. So you mean you want to pay the tip? Okay. He said, and so who's going to take care of the kids? Because you work a lot or you're in school. And he was like, so what's the purpose of you working a lot and you're in school? So somebody else is supposed to take care of the kids? Somebody else is supposed to cook his meals? Because you don't want to leave your job, but you're not working to contribute to the household because you only want to pay 25%. Who's going to take care of him? Because he's working to make these 6 figures. And it made me, it's just something to make you think, right? Just something to make you think. Not to say that he was right or she was right, but it's just something to make you think, because by saying I'm working, I'm going to school, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, what can you really contribute? At the time, I was running my business. And in addition to running my business, I was working on my doctorate. And it made me stop for a second and realize, you know what? If I was not married during that time, I will be honest with you, over the last 5 years, if I was not a married woman, I would not be a very dateable individual either. I was working all the time. Before I slowed down on my hips, I was working all the time. Sometimes I would get 4 days off a month. And that was a lot, 4 days off a month. I would wake up, sleep late, go to bed real late or whatever it was, but I had nothing to really give my marriage, let alone if I was somebody who was dating. Do I really think that would be appealing for a man who's looking for a wife? I had nothing to give. Even when I think back to being a single mom, and I was working on my undergrad and grad degrees, and I had 4 children, I spent a lot of time studying. A lot of time studying. I really honestly didn't have a lot of time for my children. And I'm being 100% honest with you. And in full transparency, I remember having, and this is probably why God has to sit me down for a little bit, because I remember having a discussion with my husband, because my husband spoke up, like, like he feels like he's by himself while I'm just giving the world all of me. And I remember saying, well, I don't know what you expect, because I definitely am not going to school just to sit here and clean up the house. And I meant that from the bottom of my heart. I was like, I know I am not about to be a whole doctor in these streets just to come back in here and clean up somebody's house or do something. No, I'm not doing that. My goal is to make enough money so we can employ somebody to do something like that. But it's like, you think he wants that? He don't want that. That's not sexy to him. It's not appealing. His love language is acts of service. And I wasn't serving up no acts. Okay. So I'm saying that to say, while we all of these things, and you hear me, I'll tell you, I am a phenomenal woman. I am, if you hear me tell it. If you hear me tell it. And I am a good woman. I do have great qualities, but I'll be 100% honest with you. Married or not, I'm not always the best wife, because it is a hard balance between being a wife, a mother, and a career woman. Something has to give. Something has to give. You cannot give everything your all. You don't have that unless you just deprive yourself. And then things within your own self will start failing. Things within your own self will start going by the wayside. Trust it. Trust me when I tell you, because I don't get my nails done. I don't. I can't. A lot of times I don't take care of myself. Sometimes I wind up getting sick, and I ran my body ragged to the point that I had to stop something I was forced to. I was forced to. And I have to eat my words, because you know what I got to do now? Cook for my husband, clean up the house. I'm home more. I have to do it. I have to do it, because I sat back and I had to think. If I let go of this husband, I have some qualities, but I'm not sure I got all the qualities to get another one at this age. So let me do what I got to do to keep the one that I have. And I really do like him. Okay. I really do like him, and I really want to keep him, but I really do. I like my husband, and I'm very attracted to him. So it's just like, okay, let me do better with the one that I have. Okay, let me do better with the one that I have. But all those qualities that make me good, do you think my husband's walking around that house saying, Dr. Holden, would you please? My husband don't care nothing about that. He don't care nothing about a doctorate, a Dr. Holden, a Minister Holden. He could care less about that. He don't care. He don't care. He's not, talking about how many degrees I have is not sexy to him. It's not. Talking
Amen.
about work is not, just talking about work and other people in their lives. And he'll be looking at me cross-eyed because he wants that attention. So, Taniqua?
This is a beautiful message. Oh my goodness. It really, really is. Because it just seemed like, I don't know, it feel like I'm under attack right now with you talking. But it just seemed, well, not really attack, but you know how like confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I think with women too, it gets to the point of where sometimes we don't even know what else to talk about but work or the kids or stuff like that it become like that's normal, but it'd be like, what else? We don't have anything else to talk about. So it's good. I'm definitely listening, closely listening. Good.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's definitely worth it, because these are not the things these are not necessarily the things that we're taught. I know that I wasn't, necessarily taught that, but when I look back on some of the things that I was taught, anything to it wasn't anything that would make me really appealing as a wife. And I could save that whole discussion for another day. But we might make jokes about it, and even Amber brought up social media, and there's like a little meme with a house dress, and they show the house dress, and it's like a Walmart house dress, but it says, but this is the house dress that brought your granddaddy home and got your grandmother with them 10 kids, and but that's not what we're told. We're told to look a certain way and to keep ourselves a certain way. Yeah, that might be what brings somebody in, might make them, attracted to you, but something has to keep you. It might make him even leave the house where his wife is there with the 10 kids, and it might make him creep over to something that he finds appealing, if we really want to get into a good discussion. But is it making you his wife? At the end of the day, when all is said and done, what are you left with? And so, but what does it say about you? What does it say about you? What does it say about your value? What does it say about you as an individual? Because really, it's never going to be about you being a wife. I never did anything. I don't do anything to say, I'm going to do this to be a wife. I just want to do what I can do to be a good woman, to be a good human being, to be a good person. That's all I want to be a good person. And that's what Abigail was doing. Really, that's who David was. David wasn't trying to do anything. David wasn't trying to get anything. David wasn't trying to protect those men, just for the sake of being able to get something one day. David was just being a good human being. That's it. And I can tell you, sometimes it feels like, and we did see this, we saw this in the text. David didn't want to be, it's not that he didn't want to be a good human being. We saw him since he was a young kid, right? And I guess he's grown. I don't know the time span, but David just did what he was taught to do. And God knew his heart, and God had already, had a plan for his life. And then here it is, life just took him into, being there for Saul, and then having to run away from Saul, and, letting Saul go. But all of that was just who he was at the very heart of him. Even protecting Nabal's men. He had no idea nothing was harmed, not because he wanted something in return, not because one day he saw himself in his position, but because he was just genuinely a good person. He was really a man after God's own heart, God's ways, God's characteristics. That's who he was. That's who we should be. And sometimes it will make you feel like you're not getting anything in return. This is what we saw of David. This is what we saw of David. When David saw that, and he's like, like, what? I didn't know David was going to kill him. Like, Lord, I'm letting you know now. I'm about to rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat that behind. All of them is going to be slayed. And that is what was going to happen. And it was mainly because it's like you get tired of doing the right thing sometimes, and then feeling like you're not going to get anything in return. But when I tell you, Abigail was like that ram in that bush, she came out there like, come on, David, I'm gonna help you bring it on down. It's not worth it. It ain't worth it. It is not worth it. It is not worth it. Okay, it's not. It just wasn't worth it. I mean, if she ain't come through like Suge Avery to Sealy when she was about to cut Mr.'s neck, like, listen, it ain't worth it. It's not worth it. I am here. It is not worth it. Okay, and we just want to make sure that because sometimes it will feel like, it will really feel like, God, why am I sitting here and I'm doing all of this and I'm not being rewarded? But trust me, your reward is coming, But no matter how tough the journey is, you got to still keep on keeping on. And I do thank God for her. And look at who the Abigails are in your life. Just think about it. Every so often, a word will come, a person will come. You know, when you were just I'm about to switch gears because what I'm doing is not worth it. And then here it comes. You get that reminder from the Lord that you are doing a good work. Do not give up. God sees what you are doing. He sees what it is that you're doing. He will provide for you. But hunger will make you do that. Being embarrassed will make you do that. Feeling unappreciated, will make you do that. You know, he felt like he protected him. And then he said, but he repaid me evil for good. We feel that way a lot. But hold on. God is watching. You know, just hold on. God will send somebody to come and intercede for you. What you have, what God has for you, let me say that. What God has for you, you will have. And nobody could take that away from you. Don't let them take it away from you because you responded to them in a way that was still ungodly. It's always going to be those godly characteristics that get you going where you need to go. It's always going to be that. I always want what God has for me. I do not want what I want for myself. Honestly, I don't. Sometimes I feel like, you know what, I could figure this out. God, you're taking too long. I don't think you know what you're doing. But that's just a fleeting thought. It is. Ultimately, I want what it is that God has for me because we will be making a decision like David. David could have went in and he could have got everything. But what would that have meant? He would have threw everything else away. Valencia?
That reminds me of, I have no idea where the scripture is, but it was saying, I think it was talking about praying publicly, and it was saying that those that seek the reward of men get their just reward. But if you wait, then there's much greater treasures in heaven. And we actually just talked about that Sunday that he is our source. And so we're never going to run out. His supply is endless. And so we are the ministry of reconciliation. So what he's saying is he's given us what we need to be able to reconcile with people. And so if we feel like we don't have what we need, draw from him and he will supply our needs. And then we just can wait on him to be our reward in the future instead of waiting for someone to say, well, great job, here, you deserve this. And, we're not always going to get that recognition that we're desiring. And that's flesh, anyway. Flesh is, important because we live in it, but we don't have to be of it. And so we have to be careful about always seeking to appease it.
Absolutely. And then it's not really, when we, how can I say, when we are looking for like that instant gratification or that satisfaction, that quick satisfaction to our flesh, there's no sacrifice in that. We're really not showing anything. We're not showing we don't have the opportunity to really display any good qualities. And I think we kind of talked about that last week. Like, it's like with David, for example. David he's already king. Whether, I don't know if he knows it yet, but he's already the king. This is a conversation that the Lord had with Samuel. He already picked who he wanted. That goes without saying. But had David not gone through what he went through, David could have easily just been like Saul. Saul didn't earn anything. Saul wasn't ready. Saul was just given something. And when the opportunity came for Saul to show what he was made of and show his character, he failed every time. He never showed that it was ever about God. It was just always about him, right? And so, but with David going through this process, David is having to sacrifice himself over and over and over again. Okay. over and over again, and he's having to show who he is. He's showing his faith despite his adversity. This is the first time that we see David really getting frustrated, like, you know what, I can't no more. Like, really, like, I'm hungry. I'm at my wit's end with this. But we saw David trying, and what we are seeing are the qualities that make a good king because of what he's having to go through. I could say that somebody's faithful. I could say, well, I'm gonna pick on Diamond because she's my daughter. I could say, well, Diamond is on this Bible study every single week because she's my daughter. You know what I'm trying to say? And she's not doing nothing. She's sitting right here, and she's gonna be here anyway, or she paid to be here. Just something. It's no real sacrifice. But somebody who, look, I might have to leave work early to be here, or I have somebody that, that has to sacrifice, like really sacrifice something, that shows them being faithful. That shows somebody being faithful. And it's like having to give up, the best of your animals. If you give the ones with the blemishes and the spots, it's not a sacrifice. Or if you giving something because you're going to get it, same thing with us giving tithes and offering. If I say, like, okay, well, I could give this little $20, I could go, okay, because if I give it $20, I'm gonna get me 200, because it just works like that. Well, then you're not sacrificing anything. You're like playing a lottery, you're putting into a susu, you're not really sacrificing. But when you say I really don't have, and even if I don't get back or get anything financial, I'm giving because it's right to give. I'm giving because the Lord say to give. I'm giving just because whatever it is. And then it's just like God sees that sacrifice and he's going to reward. But if you want to sit here and wave it from the high heavens and you want people to be like, oh my goodness, you're such a giver, girl, you're going to be blessed. God is going to reward you greatly. Oh my goodness. And then it's like, that's your reward. That right there, that's your reward. You got it. You got whatever it was that you're going to get. You got that public recognition. You appealed to your flesh. You fed your flesh. But when people don't know what it is that you're giving, and this is one of the reasons why, and I had a discussion with somebody this weekend, I'm not going to lie to you, it gets to me when we're asked to give a certain amount of money. I don't like that. If I'm in church, I please, I don't care what it is, please do not ask for a $50 offering or a $500 offering or a $5,000 offering. I don't like that. Because what happens is now, I done seen you gave your offering. I don't know. Oh, she gave a $5,000 offering. She was the first one in line to give a $5,000. I don't think people should know that. I don't think people should know that. I don't think that's just not my personal opinion. What if somebody genuinely didn't have? And here it is, I'm asking for 5,000, 500, even 50. But what if a person really don't have that? But what if the person have $5 and that's all they have? And it's on their heart to give. Like, I want to give, but this is all I have. Like the little widow's mite. If all this person have is $5 and they gave you everything, it means far more than the $5,000 to the person that this means nothing to. That could just easily give it, and it's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket to them. But I don't think we should know that. That should be between them and God. That's my personal opinion. That is my personal opinion. And I had to pray to God years ago, Lord, help me when it comes to going to church. Help me, because number one, I didn't like feeling like I was paying for service. That's number one. I didn't like feeling like I was paying for service or I needed it all the time. I understand that you need money to make a ministry go. You need it. You do. But don't ever not come in here because you don't have it. Don't ever not do that. Don't ever not come because you don't have something. Because your presence is a lot. Because I can tell you now, without your presence, then we don't have nothing anyway. So what we going to spend money on? So that's number one. And number two, I had to really pray to the Lord, like, please help me. And from that point on, the Lord started telling me before I go anywhere what I am to give. He showed me and he tells me. And I needed that. And that's between him and I. That's just between him and I. I'm not looking for anything public. I'm not looking for anything like that. Nothing. It's between you and God. You know, but even that within our characteristics, we still shouldn't be a person, you know, we got to be a person of a great, noble character. You know, we have to do that. This is between me and you, God. This ain't about public show. I'm not going to sit here and help an old lady across the street because I feel that people are watching. But then, you know, when nobody's watching, I'm going to push her down. Mm-mm. No. You know, so that's what I love about Abigail. That's what I get from her. I love that character. And we see that of David to this point. David is that person as well. Any thoughts, any questions, any comments, any disagreements with what we said? All right, we already made it to 7 o'clock. That was quick.
That was good.
I think that it was really good. You know, wasn't even what I
Excellent.
expected, but
That's
God.
why it went so fast. It was so good. It just time just going by, but you're so interested. It's hard to just say, oh, it's if nobody's looking at the clock. But you made some very good points. I really agree with you. I feel that I say give it in Jesus' name. If I'm going to do it, and when I give, I don't want no one to know because I'm not giving it for show. If I help someone, it's not always monetary. Sometimes somebody might need something to eat and you don't even realize it, and you offer them a chicken or a rice or whatever, but you do it from your heart. You don't have to tell nobody about it, because if you're doing it for show, it doesn't mean anything. To me, it doesn't mean anything. But when you do it from your heart and keep it to yourself, there's times when I used to be in church, I would hug a person and the spirit would lead me, just stick some money in her waistband. But I would never tell nobody though. And then there was others that would do it and they would announce it. And that used to bother me. I had an issue when people did that. So I agree with you 100%. But as usual, your lessons are always very interesting anyway. So
Thank you. Thank you. Look, I thought Miss Punter was going to say something when we were talking about being a wife, because Mrs. Punter.
oh yes. You don't
wife,
want me to get started on
okay?
that.
Huh?
You don't want me for 50 years. You don't want me to get started on it. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of things involved. Sacrifice, compromise, you know. It's not all one-sided. Not at all. And I, you know, I was laughing when you was talking about when you was studying what your husband was going through. Remember the t-shirt he wore to your graduation?
Yeah.
I survived her dissertation.
Yeah.
It took a lot, but he stood by you though. And see, that's what it's all about. It's there's no really guidebook on how to keep a marriage going or how to be the woman or husband in the household, because see, that's an individual thing. You don't expect what I expect and I don't expect what you expect. So that's, I used to tell people, I said, well, what do I do? Listen, you got to eat your own food, but see, what you eat is not going to make me go to the bathroom. And what I eat is not going to make you go to the bathroom. So, but that marriage thing is very, it can get very intense. It really can, but no two marriages are exactly the same.
And
It takes different things to make it work.
And I'm very happy that Ms. Punter said that, because let me go back for a second and backtrack some of my words, because when she said that, it made me think, you know, I watch a lot of reality TV. And because I pick up a lot of stuff from it. And I think about I watch the Real Housewives of Potomac, and one of the things, there's a wife on there who um was a part. She married an older man, and for them, they did a lot of swinging and threesomes and a lot of different things. And then she settled down, and she wound up having children. And she was a mother, and she tends to her children. And because she's a mother, she doesn't want to have that lifestyle anymore. And because she doesn't want to have that lifestyle, her marriage has come to an end. So with that being said, you have to know not only what he wants, but you also have to know what you want. And some things that you want might change later on, and these are the things that people need to talk about. I'm really big on premarital counseling. I'm really big on, figuring out what are the goals of your marriage, because in that particular case, she should have known that her husband wanted what he had in the very beginning. And, but when she changed and her desires changed, she probably would have known before she got into it that for my long-term goals, this is not the person that I wanted. And for some individuals, you really might want to just be a power couple. For other individuals, you might want to have a family man. For other people, you might want to be a provider. But you have to make sure that what you're doing in your life is aligning with your goals, but you also have a partner that's going to help you see your goals through. Because like Ms. Punter said, it is a lot being married. It is not all sweet stuff and lollipops and roses and having a forever plus one. Is not that. You need something to hold you together when times get tough. I needed to be worth it in some particular area, because for 5 years, my husband had to struggle through some things. And then for many years, I had to struggle through some things. Okay. So it's not you, it's a lot of back and forth, but at the end of the day, it has to be worth something. You have to have something that you're working towards and what you are fighting for. And both people have to be fully invested, fully committed, because if you're not, you're either going to lead to divorce, or you will have infidelity, among other things, or you will do what is something that I don't want, and I pray we never do. And we really agree that neither one of us want it. We don't want to have a peace treaty. That's what we don't want to do. We don't want to have a peace treaty. A peace treaty is where, we live in peace, but that's it. We sleep separate, we do separate things, we live separate lives, we don't argue, we're not going anywhere. It's cheaper to keep up, but we have nothing going on. We're not friends, we don't date, we just exist in this same house. I don't want that either. I don't want that. I've seen that a lot growing up, where you sleep here and they sleep there and there's no togetherness. I don't want that. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but like I said, we are going to be having the marriage ministry for singles soon. Okay. That is something that is coming up. No, Ms. Punter, that is not really a marriage, it's a peace treaty. But yeah, we are going to be having a marriage ministry for singles where we just talk about these things. Because I realized that having a marriage ministry with just married people, that's not realistic either, because sometimes some couples are on different pages. Some people want to know what it's like. I'm single, but how do I prepare for marriage? Maybe I don't want marriage, but I want to know what it's like. We're going to have all of that, where we're going to address in the new program that I am developing. So I will have more on that soon, and the next up and coming, hopefully by the summertime. And so that's it. Any questions or comments? Anything else? All right. Carla, do we have